Okay, no. It's echoing through the mic. I'm gonna try this at G. No.
It's gonna be the same thing. We're just gonna have to talk loud.
All right, so we're just talking loud tonight. Anyway, I'd like to welcome everybody tonight to our work session. I'd like to call this meeting to order. I'd like to inform everybody here of the Open Meetings Act that's located in the northwest corner there. At this point in time, I'd like to take roll call.
Arns,
Here.
Clausen,
Here.
Rehnquist,
Here.
Hildebrand,
Here.
McCarthy,
Here.
Murin,
Here.
Norton, Webb.
All right. Discussion tonight with our work session. We'll be discussing the city submitting a joint application with Northeast Nebraska Youth Sports Association, a Nebraska nonprofit corporation, to the sports arena facilities financing assistant, board of the state assistance for proposal providing own sports complex economic development project as authorized by section 5 of LB 1197, approved during the last legislation session. Do we try to get this to go again?
We're working on it.
Okay.
Experiencing some technical difficulties.
Hello? Hey, there we go. Are we live? Now. Yeah. Test. Test.
Is it on this one as well?
Yeah.
Okay. Not as bad.
She's got a better voice than me.
Can you move your microphones further away from you, stand and point and work towards
Yeah. Hello? Like that, maybe? Is that better? Just kind of keep them away from your face? Okay. I'll try not to yell.
Otherwise, people at home can't hear.
Yeah, right, okay. Anybody at home, we're experiencing some difficulty with our mics right now, so that's what's going on here. So right now I'd like to introduce, if you guys want to come up and have a chance to introduce yourselves and start this work session so you can go through your project and your process and explain to us what you're trying to do. And then we can get questions from the council directed at you, and then we'll have questions from the public directed at you also. So, and then you'll have a chance to answer questions when they're brought up.
Okay.
Is that good?
Yep. Do you have a sign in? Do you have a sign in?
Yeah.
Do you want to sign in?
Yeah. State your name and sign in, and then. Okay. So this one's.
Give it a shot there.
Okay.
Make transition.
Can everybody hear me?
Yep.
Okay. My name is Mitchell Schultze, and I am
the Vice President of Northeast Nebraska Youth Sports Association, a nonprofit that we established 2 years ago, almost to the date we started the process. We started that process to attain a sports complex in the city of Norfolk. I also have with me Tim Bittner, who's the president of our board, Travis Bauman, I think he's the treasurer, Tom Schomer's the secretary, and then another board member, Carissa Conrad. So I'd like to thank them for coming. Coach Tim Bittner and myself also run a program called Nebraska D-League that we started 9 years ago. It's a basketball skill development program that we play primarily in the summer. 9 years ago we started, and I kind of jokingly say that we hosted an open tryout, and we just hoped that 10 kids showed up so we could have a team. At that tryout, it was about 50 kids that showed up. We had 3 boys teams. That has since grown into a program that we started in Fremont, Grand Island a couple of years ago. And we have boys and girls teams of a total of about 62 this summer. We practice currently at the YMCA. Let me take one step back. We also do have a volleyball program as well that has roughly about 20. This is our just finished our 4th year, and we've got about 20 teams, give or take. We practice currently at the YMCA most of the time, sometimes at Lutheran High, and sometimes at Madison High School. We are overflowing when it comes to our practice space at the YMCA, and we truly believe that we can keep a facility the size that you see on the big screen there full all year round. We started a nonprofit because of a bill. It was LB 39. It is now amended in LB 1197. Which is a state sales tax turnback to help fund sports complexes like the one you see. What it does is it creates, and I'll try to go back and show a couple of pictures here, but it creates a district around the sports complex, 600 yards all the way around, and any new sales tax that is generated from the time that we publicly announce we're doing this to 4 years after its completion, it can fund 100% of the complex. Specifically, it's 70% of the state sales tax that's turned back will go towards this complex. I know we have our consultant, Jeff Week, on the phone, and one of his associates, Bert Cart. So I'm going to let them kind of explain the 3 different ways that we can do this. But ultimately, what we would be seeking is your support as a city council to partner on this and be a co-applicant to receive the state sales turnback. We're excited about it. We believe that we can not only change Norfolk, but we can change Northeast Nebraska as well. One of the best statistics that I can show to show kind of our outreach is in our Norfolk program in basketball specifically. It's about 80% of the players that we have come from outside of the city of Norfolk, and it's probably actually a little more than that, but let's just make it round numbers. And so you're talking hundreds of kids that have the opportunity to come to Norfolk and play, practice, get skill development, play the game they love, versus having to go to Sioux Falls, Omaha, Lincoln, Sioux City, and travel that extra couple of hours. We are really excited about this project. We hope that we do have your support on it. And I would like to mention too that it's an emphasis that it's state sales tax. It's not city sales tax. It's not property taxes. It's state sales tax. So you're going to pay those whether you go downtown or in this proposed development, which is on the west side of town, if you can't tell by that map. It's a great way to fund this complex, and it's a great way to have a huge economic impact on the city of Norfolk. Jeff, I don't know, I'm assuming you can hear me.
Yes.
If you want to talk a little bit about the different ways that we can finance, or I should say apply for the funds, I'd appreciate that.
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
I think so.
Okay, good. My name is Jeff Week, MJ Consulting. I was one of the original drafters of LB 39 and worked with Burke Harr, who's also on the phone, to amend it to LB 1197. What we've done this year with the new bill is allowed for a co-applicant, meaning a political subdivision with a not-for-profit corporation to partner and to create a sports complex. And it's given an opportunity to either be publicly owned or privately owned by the not-for-profit. The privately owned not-for-profit option, which is what we're talking about tonight, requires a couple of different solutions to get that sales tax tool to work for us. The first option is in Section 5, and again, this is the new law, so it's not actually law yet. It becomes law on July 19th. But we are anticipating that when the law is passed, we want to kind of hit the ground running, assuming there's a positive outcome to your decision. But the vote of the people is required if a private not-for-profit is going to own the facility. And that offers a couple of different options, two options. One, where there's a vote at a general election. That requirement is a conditional approval by the 5-member panel that the law originally set up to vet these applications. That's number one. If we were to decide to go to a vote of the people in November on the general election, it would require September 1st. I think it's the September 1st is the deadline to certify the election, and the conditional approval would have to be before that. So that's one option. The second option, I mean, you could also go to a primary election as well. But the second option is a special election with a mail-in ballot. So either one of those options, if they pass, the public votes in favor, would give us the support or the approval that the conditional approval from the 5-member panel needs to move the project forward. Those are the two options on the voting side. Now, Burke Harr worked with Mike Rogers, who is with Gilmore Bell on the bond side and the League of Municipalities to work out a third option, which is going to be new information, but it's also a viable option. And Burke, do you want to give a little heads up on who you are and why you're on the call?
Yep. First of all, thank you very much. Can everyone hear me okay as well? Well, can you hear me?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, great. So my name is Burke Harr. I served in the legislature for 8 years, and I served on revenue. And during that time, I did a lot of work on the turn back, working both with and against Lynn Rex as far as viable ways to go forward. And so LB 39 was passed, and when it was passed, it was contemplated where it would be, the facility would be, it would be a public-private partnership, but the facility would be owned by a public entity. And Lynn Rex has some concerns, and she can be vocal when she wants to be. She has some concerns as far as the constitutionality of LB 39 when it was a privately held non-profit that owned it, and it was a public-private partnership. So working together with Lynn Rex, with Jeff, and again with Mike Rogers, we came up with this legislation for 1197. And 1197 is really based on a bill that was passed the previous year where I was working with the City of Omaha and Omaha Performing Arts, where there is a turn back and a relationship between the City of Omaha and Omaha Performing Arts. And what we've done is taken that and applied it on the sports complex side, as opposed to the sports complexes, music venues. And what it is the city and the nonprofit would enter into an agreement to apply together, and then the turnback would go to the city. The difference is the city would then use the turnback money instead of paying off the bond. It would be used to pay a lease, in which the facility then would be open for use by the public, in an agreement that would be made between the nonprofit and the public entity as far as what that relationship looked like. But ideally, it would be during the off use times for the main nonprofit. It would be for the use of the facility, the use of parking, and use of restrooms, concessions, you name it. I'm working on doing a couple projects like that, and again, this was an option that was contemplated when we applied or when we passed the legislation. And if I could, on a personal note, while I have the microphone, just say, my kid plays for OSA, and we were the Washington Capitals to the Harlem D-League team that just cleaned our clock every single time. So I can speak to how good this basketball conference is and league, and I just think it's a great thing to expand. And I would entertain any questions you may have as far as this new concept. I kind of gave a 10,000-foot description of it. I can go into greater detail about it. One of the things that would happen is there would be a small administrative fee that would be allowed to be taken out of the turnback tax, which could be used for administrative costs to pay for the costs for the city to administer this lease.
I guess, yeah, I would just open the floor up to any questions that you may have at this time.
I do have one question. It says in here that the D-League will be the primary user of this facility, but then there's also some talk about the lease. The city would pay to lease that, so it's a public facility also. So how does that balance out? How do you become the primary and then the city pays a lease? How does that mesh?
Well,
Yeah, I'll let him answer that. Great question.
yeah, if you'd like, I can answer it. So you have to pay a reasonable fee. So the lease has to be for a reasonable rate, whatever that is. And so looking at what's available right now, you'd look at comparables both across the state and then within Norfolk currently. And you'd have to establish what that fair market value is for that period. Mind you, it wouldn't be just for the facility itself. It would also be for parking, which the statute allows for as well. So it'd be for parking 24/7, and then additional for that off time. And it's just coming up with whatever that fair market value is. And this is a contract, so it has to be an agreement between two parties. And the contract itself would have to be signed off at the end of the day by the governor and that board of 5 individuals. So it's a work in progress. And I can't give you a dollar amount today, right? That's something we'd have to negotiate.
Yeah, one, I would be interested in that dollar amount, but also the availability. What's the availability to the public for that facility? I would be probably concerned that we move with this concept and yet don't find that the public the city of Norfolk or the surrounding communities have access to it.
Yeah, Burke, you can hit on too, but I think it's all based on the contract, so it can be, primarily our use is in the evenings and the weekends.
Yeah.
So if that's, during the day, or whatever the contract, I think like Burke was alluding to, would be
Right.
negotiated.
So here's what I would say. If you go vote of the people, right, then the money passes through and it goes right to D-League. And that's good and well.
Northeast Nebraska.
Not D-League, the 501c3.
Yeah.
Sorry, the 501c3, correct. And that's good and well, and it goes to pay off that bond. That's fine. If we go this other route, what we have now is a chance for the community to have the ability to use this facility and not just the 501c3. And how the community engages with this facility would be a contract and negotiation between the two parties. But the nice part is now the city gets to have an additional amenity for its citizens that it would not under the direct election process. And it would allow it to be open for more groups over longer periods or different periods of time. So now it'd be, I would argue should be open something like 6 in the morning till 2 in the afternoon with time to, rotate every day, and then from probably after school, 4-ish, until whenever it would be for the, for the other use.
So the two parties negotiate how the bond is paid. Is that correct?
No.
How is the revenue bond
How
paid?
what?
Revenue
How
bonds,
involved?
revenue bonds paid by 70% sales tax from the state.
Okay.
You stated that, and you also stated
Right, okay.
that there's no sales tax taken out of cities'
Right,
sales
right.
tax, so.
Just state.
It would
Just-
be,
yeah.
it would be a net positive city sales tax.
Right, in a 600-yard radius.
Correct.
So my question would be, so right now, let me pull that picture up.
Yeah,
in that
I can.
600-yard radius.
Oops. There you go.
You don't have a lot of businesses to support the project, that are bringing in.
So it's, not to
Can you go into that part? How that
Yeah,
works?
yep. So just to clarify, it's new, sales tax.
Okay,
So, I know Paul is here today, but the goal, if you can kind of tell, is to develop all the way around it, which is where Paul and his team kind of come into play. So when we're talking about state sales tax, in that radius right there, we would capture some existing. Has nothing to do with what we're trying to do. We don't get any of that. It's simply new additional sales tax.
okay, I wasn't aware of that, so it's.
Yep,
just
good
new-
question.
Yeah.
So it's basically you have to make, before you can start, you almost have to have contracts in place. with
Letters
new
of intent.
business Going in so that especially with the joint applicant, we're trying to mitigate the risks to the city on the revenue bonding. That'll finance so can you kind of explain how that works then? You know what I'm talking? I think that'd be a concern for people who go, okay, we're taking this debt on with the revenue bonding, and then who's there to pay it in if there's no businesses there right now to do it? How does that work?
I'll probably let Jeff answer that, but primarily, we have to go to a 5-member committee for kind of a pre-approval, and if we have nothing there, they're not gonna approve anything. You can't just get the money up front to pay for it. You've gotta have letters of intent to kind of answer that question of, whatever it may be, a restaurant, a hotel, a gas station, et cetera, that are committed to going in this area. And so they're not gonna approve anything unless we have all that sort of backed up. And Jeff, if you wanna hit more on that, go for it.
I'm sorry.
Or not. Jeff?
Lost you there.
What's the question?
If you just want to talk through a little bit of the, just the commitments that we need in order to actually receive the funding or even apply to it.
Yes. Ultimately, because we need if we're going to go to a vote of the people, we need a conditional approval. The Department of Revenue has been very clear that we need to have strong support from the retail community within the district, so LOIs or purchase agreements or contracts specifically for the district on the, as part of the application process. So, we have a great partner with, Dial and Dicon, and with Paul and Jim, the landowners. They're committed. We have interest from Barn Grill, we have interest from Hotel. Once we decide, you as a city decide that you are willing to be our co-applicant, that's basically the first step, because ultimately that commitment basically starts the clock running on new retailers within the district. So, yeah, I mean, I said this to Candace earlier today, that a key part of this is working together, and that is our development partner basically coming through with the retailers that will support the sales tax needed for the complex.
And if I could speak to the lease, you're never going to have perfect alignment of collecting sales tax of $1,000 a month and rent of $1,000 a month, right? So the way you work that is how the lease should be drafted, in my opinion, is that the city has no liability. So that if the lease is $1,000 and only $200 come in, there is no $800 that the city is liable for. And if more money comes in, $1,200 comes in, there should be contemplated in the contract how that $200 is used to promote youth athletics within the community. And that's, again, negotiated between the two parties.
Do you have to know what sort of agreement that you want to apply for before you would say you put it to vote? Like you listed 3 different agreements that are different than what they were before, the 3 new ones that have come forward. Do you have to have that in place before you put it on the ballot?
So keep in mind, the lease part of this is its own deal that does not have to go to vote.
Okay.
The general election is a separate deal. So I don't want them to get confused where it's kind of the same thing.
Right.
So if we go to a general election and it's a vote yes or no deal, that has nothing to do with the city lease at all. Hopefully that makes
Correct.
sense. I want to I think there's maybe some confusion there.
The operation of it, right? I mean, because if the city, if you're leasing from the city, that's one way. If we're leasing from you, that's another way. And then
There's no options where we would be leasing from the city right now.
Okay, I thought I heard, okay.
No, so there's two options. You can either go to the vote of the people in the general election or by a special election.
Right.
And then the other way is to have the sales tax run through the city, and then the city pays that to the nonprofit via a lease agreement.
Okay.
That makes sense? Okay. And you can correct me if I'm wrong, Burke or Jeff.
Nope, that is correct. Yep.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mitchell, can you go back one slide?
Sure.
You had talked about volleyball and basketball.
To
Is there
the-
other sports, other opportunities? I've
This
seen
one?
an outdoor space as well.
This one here?
Yeah. And then how does that kind of impact, I guess, our current Parks and Rec with what they're doing, for softball, t-ball?
Yeah. How does it impact it? I'm not sure if I can answer that, Andrew. We toured a turf pad south of Des Moines in, I forget the city, and that's kind of when we decided to add this to our complex. We would like to offer, and all of this, actually maybe I can talk about competitive sports, because all of this is in the law states competitive sports. And so to us, there's a difference between competitive sports and recreational sports. I don't think we would try to take anything away from the city's rec at all. Would we like a place for competitive softball, baseball teams, soccer teams to practice? I think that's kind of where more that would lie. Hypothetically, if we can get to the point where we can host some of those tournaments, I think that we would have to use Taha, and we would have to use some of the other facilities in town. And so I think that it would be a great partnership. We're hosting our first tournament as a basketball program this weekend, actually. We have 120 teams committed and that are coming. And we're using the YMCA, we're using Lutheran High, we're using actually Madison High School, and we're using Norfolk High School. And so, you know, we need a lot of space if we were to do that. And so we think that we could certainly work on a partnership with the city in that aspect, or even hypothetically the YMCA if we were to host a tournament that would be an indoor tournament. So I think there's a difference there, just kind of reiterate on competitive versus recreational. These facilities by law are for competitive sports.
Thank you.
So what, I'm kind of going off what Andrew said, is what competitive sports are you marketing to at this moment, or would you like to market to?
So we have basketball and volleyball as Nebraska D League. You know, I think that there's a lot of great baseball, softball, soccer programs that turf field would be really, really cool for. I currently coach a little girls team for Norfolk Football Club, and we have a cone-made field on Lutheran High's practice field. So we just practice in grass right now. So to offer something like that would be a dramatic step up in that part of it.
Hey, so I want to maybe add some context here. The economic impacts from going to the indoor building, yearly economic impacts or after construction is open is about $12 million a year for just the indoor building. The total building cost is just under $25 million right now at our current estimate. When we added the outdoor fields, it added about another $7 million worth of construction costs, but jumped up our economic impacts to roughly $22.5 million per year because of the adaptability of that local, that outdoor complex, in addition with how we would potentially partner with Tazuka. It would generate, indoor would generate about 6,000 new hotel room night stays, and the outdoor would add another 4,500. So you have roughly 10,500 new hotel room night stays to the city of Norfolk that are currently not being captured. So that gives you a little bit on the economic impact side. The visits, non-unique visits to this location, this is why we think there's significant value in the retail component, and that retail should be something that would be very interesting. After the indoor building is built, it's roughly 450 non-unique visits to the indoor building, and then after the outdoor building is finished, jumps up to about 650 non-unique visits. So there's significant opportunity here to capture new growth and also serve the local community in Norfolk and Northeast Nebraska. I think that's the goal. That's the heart of the not-for-profit. So, yeah. So I wanted to make sure I shared that on the record so that you know what we've been thinking about. Thank you.
Hey, Jeff, can you clarify that non-unique visits?
Well, a unique visit is anybody that comes one time and doesn't come back. So every time you go to the grocery store, it's a visit, but you go there probably, you go like we do, probably 3 times a week to the grocery store. Each one of those is a non-unique visit.
But I thought you said 653. I was thinking that should have been thousands on the end of that.
Yeah, that's what did I not? I'm sorry.
Yeah, you said 400 and 600.
650,000 non-unique visitors, I'm
Zeros.
sorry.
You had
Yeah.
3 zeros to that, yeah.
Yeah,
Let me get that on the record. Okay, sorry.
maybe a day, yeah.
Mitchell, you talked about Fremont and Grand Island. Are these kind of facilities being brought to them as well?
Yes, and I'd maybe defer this to Jeff, but I guess to my knowledge, Kearney is the first to use this law. Grand Island has one in the works, Fremont has one in the works, Omaha has several. And Jeff, I don't know if you want to maybe elaborate on, I don't know, or if you can, elaborate on what else is going on in, that would be using this particular
Well, I
funding.
mean, there's outdoor, there's indoor, there's all kinds of different projects that are trying to get started, and some that have started and aren't feasible. So I mean, there's that too. So I know Valley started a project. I know Fremont, because D-League has teams in Fremont. They're aware that there's talk about something in Fremont as well. And actually, there's a website for that facility, and they'll make an application. And then there's projects in Omaha, there's projects in Gretna, and there's projects in Lincoln, Kearney, York, North Platte are all being considered. Yeah, again, I don't have first-hand knowledge on all of them, but I know that the legislation, your Congressman Mike Flood basically said not a sports complex would be built now without using the sales tax turnback, which I think is probably pretty accurate. So.
Yeah, Mike Flood told us that about 4 years ago, that there won't be one built without it.
When he says feasibility or feasible for some communities, is Norfolk feasible?
I believe very, but I'll let Jeff, that's what Jeff does, so I'll let him answer that question.
Yeah, and it really has to do with I'm sorry. I just heard it. Am I okay?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Our pro forma that we've done for Northeast Nebraska Youth Sports Association is based on occupancy, not based on what if or build it, they will come. That's not a real thing. And we have worked diligently to understand how we fill the space that we have available at a market or below cost to the user, and still able to provide the service that we need, and for not just D-League, but for other organizations, tournament, and then also events, because it may be an event space as well that we're looking at. So feasibility has to do with occupancy and the ability to pay by the organizations or the teams that are participating.
Thank you.
Jeff, in your, one of the options is for the lease agreement. Does that, when you, for the open courts, let's say, open facility to the public, would that be staffed by city, or would that be staffed by this organization?
I'm going to let Bert take that one. Bert?
Yep, thank you very much. And I apologize, I don't know who asked that question. But the answer is it would be part of the lease agreement that the nonprofit would provide the services, the employment, and the wraparound services. So there would be zero liability to the city.
Thank you.
And similar to that, we would have in the lease the amount so that there'd be zero liability if someone were injured. That would be contracted that the nonprofit would have to have insurance to cover that amount as well.
Thanks.
Thank you.
I think as far as tonight goes, the lease and stuff in that public project isn't, that's something you'll negotiate in the contract after, right? I mean, that's, I think tonight's more about if you're interested in the LB 1197 to go on the ballot and those sort of questions, right? Am I right with that, or do we need to be talking about the lease and stuff tonight?
Yeah.
Jeff, do you want to answer that?
You mean tonight? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, when I heard work session, I thought this was going to be a kind of a dialogue.
Okay. That's fair.
I'm a novice to standing in front of a city council and making a pitch.
No,
But,
that's totally fair.
But what we wanted to do, and Burke and I talked about this, we just want to give as many options as possible so that the city of Norfolk can utilize the tool if it works out. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But we sure would like to give you every opportunity to meet the criteria as needed.
I'd probably add, all those locations and facilities that he's talked about, different cities in the state. This is all pretty new.
Yeah.
And I think we finally have a clear path, well, a few, obviously, but we finally have a clear path on a way to get this done.
Right.
And so I think what we would like as our board is, maybe just some guidance on, would the lease be an option, or would a general vote be a general election be the way that as a city council you'd prefer us to go. I think we probably have our opinions. We know what's easier probably, but we also have maybe some opinions towards another way as well, that we would support. So I don't know if we'll get there tonight, Shane, but because obviously it's a lot of you were just hearing about this and how it works and so forth. But yeah, I think that was, like Jeff said, just a dialogue on getting you guys up to speed. In our opinion, it's a huge opportunity economically, but for the youth of this city and as I stated earlier, for the youth of Northeast Nebraska. And I've got a mom here who came from Atkinson. She comes from Atkinson twice a week to practice, and I'd like to let her talk on that for a couple of minutes, because otherwise the opportunities go away. I would invite any of you, we're done with Sunday practices, but I would invite any of you to come on a Wednesday or Thursday night to the YMCA and see how many kids are involved and the opportunities that it provides. Because ultimately we can talk about economic impact and development and all this fun stuff and look at this cool building, but what gets lost sometimes is the opportunities for kids. And I grew up in Osmond, small town. I made a similar traveling team. It was a bunch of money to play. I had to go to 2 hours away to practice, and my mom told me to get a job, and so I got a job. I respect my parents for that decision, but this could change youth sports in Northeast Nebraska. So I would like to not lose that site. Any other questions?
I think it'd be interesting to know, you were talking about economic impact, but the economic impact from not only what you're doing in your facility and what it brings to the community, but also the economic impact it'll take to generate enough revenue to finance the bonds off the 70% sales tax, and what that increase in businesses around in that 600-foot area, 600 yards or 600 yards. Right?
Yards, yep.
Area, and what that would look like for an economic impact to the city as well. I think that'd be something to look at too, because if you guys are or if you have to bring in 70% sales tax, that's also bringing in sales tax to the city, which obviously is the biggest portion of our budget. And to know those numbers, and you could base it real simply off what it takes to finance the bonds on the your project, what you have to go out and get, and that wouldn't even include the extra that would come in, but that would give us an idea of what.
Mitchell, don't you have those, Mitchell?
Yep, I do. And Jeff, I'll let you fact check me on any of this if I say a number wrong. But currently we have and I'll speak in rough numbers right now, but currently we have about $8 million worth of state sales tax in LOIs that would produce, it's a 20-year period. I don't know if we've mentioned that. And so what that generates and breaks down to into city sales tax, just based off of that, is $194,000 of city sales tax a year. Obviously, as Jeff mentioned, this project, if we base it off the numbers that he has, is 4 times that. So generally speaking, you can do the math on if we can fully back this project with state sales tax turn back. It's pretty simple math. But Jeff, I don't know if you have anything you'd like to add to that or fix my numbers. I think I got them right though.
No, I think that's pretty close, and I sent Randy an updated version of the sales tax, Randy, and maybe you can speak to that part and how the sales tax would work. The big thing is we have good partners that are willing to work with us to develop the parcels around. Make sure, number one, that the city is willing to be our co-applicant, regardless of whatever pathway we decide to take, and that our good development partners work with us to bring in the sales tax generation that we need in order to continue to make this project feasible. Those are the 2 thresholds that I think we just need to get in front of right now. So whatever path we take, it still is going to require a sales tax backing a lease or a bond regardless.
The numbers Jeff had provided earlier was based on 4 limited service restaurants, a casual dining restaurant, convenience store, hotel, and then about 20,000 square foot of retail. I don't believe there's letters of intent yet for much of any of those.
We do have some.
You do have some?
Mm-hmm.
Good. Based on those and the revenue assumptions he had, that would generate almost $13 million of taxable sales, $12,945,895. And the 5.5% state sales tax on that would be $712,000. 70% of that would be available for the project, which would be about $500,000 a year. And depending on what you needed for cover factor, what kind of interest rate you could get, which all depend on several things. One, what the general interest rate market is at the time we go try and sell these bonds. Probably more so how firm the commitments are that you're talking about, Mitch, that these businesses will actually come and will actually generate these kinds of sales. But we sized a bond issue based on a 125% cover factor. In other words, we'd want to be getting sales tax in that would cover debt service plus 25% more to get some cushion. And that would support about $4.5 million of principal. Then we also looked at the possibility of an enhanced employment area and a 2% occupation tax on that, which is basically the same credit. You'd be looking at taking what's subject to sales tax and adding 2% to that to be an occupation tax. It could then go back to help pay bonds. And you get 100% of that. You want to take 70% of that, you get 100% of that. And using the same cover factor on a 6.25% interest rate, same as for the other one, that'd give you about 2.3 to use 2.5, $2,328,339 to be exact. If you go through that math, and that's the kind of numbers that we'd be looking at for a bond issue, given those sets of assumptions. But that depends greatly on how firm the commitments are, how good the taxable sales estimates are, how well the underwriter and we do have the city's financial advisor here tonight that can talk about that in more detail than I can. Bruce Leffler from Piper Jaffray. And we also have the city's bond counsel, Tyler Mullen from Barrett Home, who can address some of the legal issues involved with all this. But those are the kind of things we're looking at, and those numbers are where Mitch gets that $194,000 of annual city sales tax he's talking about.
I heard you mention earlier a 20-year sentence before. Can you explain what this 20 years is?
Jeff, I'll defer that to you, if that's all right.
Hey, so I want to make sure you guys know, I see Randy talking on YouTube, but because I'm listening on the phone, I can't hear him, so I can't validate what I know Randy and I talked, and I'm sure he was accurate on what he said, so I'm going to leave that. I trust Randy, smart. But I do want to say that it's a 20-year bond, and the term of the lease can be variable. It could be 10-year, it could be 20-year, and Burke, you can address that. But the revenue bonds would be over a 20-year period, and that's in the law itself.
But Jeff, the state sales tax is also collected for 20 years, correct?
Yes, it is.
And after those 20 years, how does this?
After the 20 years, it goes to the general fund,
Okay.
state general fund.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Any more questions from council? If not, did you have some?
Yeah, I would like Carissa to come up.
Okay.
I'll let her, does she, I think she has to sign it.
Okay. Well, my name is Carissa Conrad, and my husband and I live in Atkinson, Nebraska. So we are an hour and 40 minutes away, and we have had 4 kids who throughout the last 5 years have participated, all of them, in D-League. And we don't drive this far because we love the windshield time or because gas is cheap. But we wanted a place or a program for our kids to develop that was more than just skills. And once we kind of found out what Tim and Mitch had developed, we realized this was more than basketball to us. It really began to mean a lot. If you have young kids right now or you're at all involved with them, you would probably realize that resiliency and discipline and leadership are things that they're not real high right now. And what we began to realize was they took the sport of basketball and they made it more than basketball, right? And so they had brought in all of these coaches from a lot of different locations that were continually capitalizing with our kids all the time on developing these other traits. And in fact, it was so impressive that depending on the year, we've had more than 17 kids drive from Atkinson an hour and 40 minutes to practice, to be at practice, and an hour and 40 minutes back home. But I think you'd probably be really pleasantly surprised if you looked at the rosters for Nebraska D-League, whether it was basketball or volleyball, that they are towns, or they are kids scattered from towns all over of Northeast Nebraska, pulling them in from every direction. And that only happens when you're the parent. When you're paying and you're driving, that only happens if it's something that's really exceptional. And I think that's something that they've proved to do and do really well. When you talk about this building, this complex, this sports facility, and what Northeast Nebraska Youth Sports Association is proposing, I know when it's Norfolk, this is like a home run, because realistically, I know what we pay when we go on to different tournaments, when we spend our summer weekends in hotels and eating out and shopping. I know what we pay for that. And that all of a sudden gets to come here versus it going to Sioux Falls and Omaha and Lincoln all of the time. That part's awesome, but I want you guys to look, kind of beyond that. When people do youth sports like what these guys have, it begins to have an impact. It changes kids' lives on the hardwood, on the volleyball court, on the basketball court. But when you look at it like this becomes an opportunity for all of these other small towns like what I'm from. I grew up in Chambers, Nebraska, and we drove to Norfolk every single week, all summer long, to play down here because you needed a higher level of basketball. You needed to be challenged, those kind of things. But if our coach would have tried to tell us, or tell our parents, I should say, we're always driving to Omaha, we're always driving to Lincoln, those kind of things, and all the expenses that would have occurred with that was not happening, right? And so when you guys have a facility like this that's proposed, it begins to bring opportunity to all of these smaller towns in Northeast Nebraska. It gives them the opportunity to level up and to play competitively, and it makes Norfolk kind of a hub for that. And so I just want to express that as a parent from a small town, having been raised in a small town and raising kids, it's out of our reach to constantly play other places. But I think it also begins to open up new doors. My kids have had the blessing to get to play with the Nebraska D-League, and that's been awesome. But that's not every single kid. And so when you have a facility like this, now you can have high school coaches from small towns say to parents like, hey, I'm not asking to pay for a hotel. I'm not asking to send money for them to eat out the whole time. We're just going to Norfolk for the day. There's a tournament there, and that's awesome, and then we'll be back home, right? And so that's just what I want to express to you guys, is that something like this, an organization like Northeast Nebraska Youth Sports Association, that changes communities. But it's not just Norfolk it's changing, it's a lot of our small towns. And so for us, that's something that's just pretty priceless. So, thank you.
Mitch, you have any more to say, or can I invite some of the public to come up and start asking some questions too? Okay, we're good. Okay, at this time, members of the public, if you've got any questions for this group here, you can sure feel free to come up and ask them. Don't forget to state your name and write your address. I don't want to interrupt you while you're talking. It seems to make people angry.
My name is Paul Mettleman. We own the property that they're locating their project on, south of the hospital on the bypass there. I think you all know where it is. The public probably doesn't necessarily know where it is, but it's south of the hospital, the hay meadow that sits there. Myself and Dicon, my partner Jim Thorburn out of Omaha, he owns Dicon, I own Medallion Construction and the property out there. They approached us, these guys, Jeff saw the property, said that's the piece right there, it's in town, it's right south of a hospital, it's just a great area, so we're trying to work with them. We have Oak Real Estate out of Omaha hired. They weren't mentioned earlier on, but they're hired to do all the placement of the hotels, the strip centers, the businesses, the QSRs, the quick service restaurants, the McDonald's, just any and everything we can get out there that generates sales tax. So they have called literally over 100. Do you have a number? But they've called over 100 people, including the Lowe's, the Home Depots, the Farm Fleets, just everybody. Olive Garden, just on down the line. They've called a lot of people, and they are getting interest. You said you had some LOIs. It's kind of like the chicken and egg a little bit. Yeah, we'll come if they're going to be there, but if they're going to be there, they need the businesses to be there to get that tax. So it's a little bit of a struggle, but not too bad. People are coming together. The LOIs, You can clarify that in the LOI that, if this doesn't happen, this won't happen, so.
Right.
That's all, those are all doable things. I know Jeff mentioned the 650,000 visits a year. That's pretty incredible, I think. That all those people will buy gas, candy bars, hamburgers, stay at the hotel. So we are working, we do have a hotel kind of in mind for up front there, so. But years ago, a few years back, the city had enough foresight to create this whole area out there as a blight and substandard. So that hurdle has already gone. We've gone through that process already, and the state has been instrumental in creating the LB 39, the statute there, and then along with the LB 1197 they made some changes in that But they've also, the state has also incorporated the use of TIF in these areas, along with every city in Nebraska uses it, every state in the union has it, all 49. There's one more in there, but 49 states utilize TIF, so it's something that is necessary to do something of this magnitude. So we hope the council has a openness and foresight to expand on that and allow that to come together, just like the state sales tax refund on that does. So I don't know if you have any questions for me.
I think you're good, Paul.
I'm good.
Yeah.
I want to say more. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else? Council? I don't see anybody else have anything to say, so if we've got more questions up here, you've got more questions, but now would be time to start asking some of those.
I don't necessarily have any question per se. I like the idea of this sports facility complex, or whatever we can legally call it. I think it's got a great, it would become a great asset to Norfolk. My concern a little bit is the lease on how that shakes out, and then also maybe if the city of Norfolk's actually backing this or is a co-applicant in this, how does that benefit our citizens? I realize this is a competitive sports versus recreational sports, but I just want to make sure if we're backing or being a co-applicant that we're doing it for, everybody involved. So I guess that's just a comment I had.
I think we've got a lot on the table here, what's been discussed tonight, what we've heard, and what we've kind of learned about the project. So appreciate that, getting everything out in front of us for us to kind of digest, and it gives the public an opportunity to, come up with their own questions also over the course of the next few weeks or whatever. I don't know what our plan is moving forward on this sort of project, if we're gonna do another work session or whatnot, and then come back with a few more questions, but I think it would be nice to get, some sort of transcript of some of the information you laid out tonight. Maybe you have some of that. I've seen in the packet you had some stuff laid out, but just basically going over some of the numbers you illustrated tonight, and some of the benefits it's going to give the community in Norfolk, some of the economic impact it'll do, and then also talking about how many teams you have coming in, what that does, maybe even break down we've 30% from here and 40%. Norfolk's is a hub now, and this can only help maintain that status of bringing people to our community. So I think just having something like that to present in front of us and to get our eyeballs on would be good. So if somebody can come up with something like that the next week or two, that'd be really good. And then I think we'll probably figure out if we're going to do another work session on how this is going to move forward. I don't know. So that'll be some discussion I'm sure staff will have, and they'll make a recommendation to us, and then we can keep moving the ball forward. So.
Yeah, and I would just like to add, I appreciate you guys presenting what you did tonight, because I think it did give us a pretty good idea of how this works, and That's pretty exciting.
I'll wait for Mitchell to be done here. Mitchell, I maybe have a question for you. Is it, a little bit ago you had mentioned that you can do a primary, a special election, or a general election, and we can move this out to the individual voter on a general election. And you said there's some avenue that you guys would prefer over another, and I guess before we close, what avenue would you prefer over others, and maybe why?
Yes, thank you. That's a great question. I was going to answer that anyway, so. So again, I would like to clarify the lease option is its own separate option. We also have a general election or a special election. So that's kind of one option with two ending points, okay? The second option would not require a vote, but it would be a pass-through from the city with a lease back to the nonprofit. So if we go the general election route, there is no lease. There would not have to be a lease. I guess there could be, but that would not be part of the deal at all if we go to a general election or a special election. I believe that we're pretty confident, but I'll speak on behalf of the board. Quite frankly, I think we would prefer to go to general election with this. We want transparency to be number one in this. We want the citizens of Norfolk to understand how this works, how it's funded, what opportunities it can provide, the impact, to answer some of your questions, Shane. And we will fine tune those numbers. And we want this to be educational for the citizens of our community. This is a huge opportunity to get something paid for by the state of Nebraska, to bring it to our city. And truly, to answer your question, Frank, on what benefits does the community have, maybe directly, I'd have to maybe come up with them. But indirectly, as far as the economic impact and the city sales tax that's produced off of this, should almost speak for itself to an extent. And if it goes to a general election and it's a vote yes or vote no and it passes, all of that will happen. If the vote is no, obviously it's not going to happen. We probably could look at an option B and go back to the lease agreement. But quite frankly, I don't know if we'd want to do that. It would look as if we didn't get our way, so we're going to do it a different way. And I think that all of you can probably understand we don't want to do that from your experiences. So our preference at this point in time, and obviously that can change, would be a general election or a special election. To our knowledge, we can't do a special election before the general. We've been working on this project for 5 years now, and to us it's kind of like, hey, let's either do this or not. And if we need to go get the support of all the young families in this community to do that, I feel pretty confident. We need opportunities in this. We need more space. This would grow our community. And if we can get the education piece of this down and communicated clearly, I think we feel pretty confident in that. Quite frankly, we've talked to some already, and there's a lot of excitement about it. But to understand that it's a state sales tax turn back, it's not a property tax, it's not a city sales tax increase, that's the hurdles that we have to jump and we have to get past. And we understand that. But education is key, and we plan on hosting as many town halls and whatever we need to do, social media marketing, to do that. So I believe that would be kind of our first option. Unless the city says, hey, we really, really want to partner with you on this to provide that direct impact to the citizens. To me, it sounds like that's not really what you're leaning towards right now, and I can't say I agree or disagree with that. I think it's new to everyone, and we all need to digest it a little bit as well. That's new to us as well. Frank, I would tell you that. We learned more about that just today. And so it's another option that's out there to get this done. At the end of the day, that's our goal, is to get this project done and to impact again, economic impact, all that stuff, but to impact the youth of our communities and our region. So, I hope that answers your question, Corey.
Yeah, it does, thank you.
Okay, yeah.
I don't want to just state, just from my own personal perspective, I appreciate the transparency and what that put it on the ballot. I think that's a heads up, or a good statement to make and to the public and with the transparency part, and I appreciate that.
You bet.
So,
Mitchell, what would be the deadline to get it on the general ballot for us to make a decision?
So keep in mind, the law is not officially amended yet. I believe it's July 18th. The amendment takes effect. From there, I believe we need a resolution from the city council, and September 1st is the latest we can apply to have it on the general ballot.
So you have about
All the steps in between there, I'm not 100% sure on yet.
Should be 5 or 6 weeks in there to make all those decisions and.
Yeah, I think the actual time frame here is pretty tight if we want to get it on the general, because as Mitch mentioned, we have to have a resolution saying we're submitting this joint application, and that resolution would basically contain the ballot language that would then go on the ballot, but we can't move it forward to the ballot the way I understand the law until the state State Financing Assistance Act Board, I believe is what the official name of it is. That's a
Sounds right.
5-member board.
Correct.
So that board actually gives conditional approval to this project. I don't believe we can bring that forward to the voters, and that has to be by September 1 to get it on the general election ballot. Now, there's nothing with this like there is with the additional half-cent for the police station, where you can't bring it back then. If you miss that deadline, bring it back for a special election. You can do that, but that's costly. Brianna had some numbers from several years ago, and I think it was well over 40,000. Yeah, at that time, and I doubt it's gone down since then. It's probably gone up.
That number sounds right.
So if we want to get it on the general election ballot, we're on a pretty short leash, and I'm not sure how quickly the State Financing Assistance Act Board, if I think I got that acronyms all strung together correctly, but until that 5-member board actually, and I think they have to have a hearing, and I think they have to advertise that hearing. And I believe there's a 30-day advertisement window. So this is all getting tight if we want to get it on the general election ballot, and the State Financing Assistance Act Board would have to move pretty quickly. So we don't have a lot of time for additional meetings and work sessions if we are looking to get it on the November election ballot. If we are okay waiting and having it on a special election, there isn't that tight time frame.
tonight's only discussion, obviously, we can't make any decisions tonight, so it's only discussion, so I don't really want to get into what we want to do or not do, obviously, right? It's just, I think we want to just put it out there, this is what has to be done. I think we can put a timeline together, Randy, if you want to do that, and then get that to the council, so we know kind of what the timeline is going to take to do this, but I don't think we should be discussing.
And the big question mark in that timeline is the state board.
Yeah, and so July 18th plus your resolution plus that. So yeah, you're probably right. It's probably pretty tight, but.
All right, well, I guess, anybody else have anything to say?
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mitchell.
For the presentation.
Yeah, appreciate it.
I guess we will, that being said, call this meeting over. I mean, adjourn. I'm new at this.